What's up, guys? Welcome back to Jeff of All Trades, and today I'm going to be talking about how you can get paid consistently using a strategy that I learned while trading in the stock market. Before I start the video, if you haven't watched my Options 101 video, I highly recommend watching that because it's going to give you a better idea of how to use this strategy. The strategy that I'll be covering today is selling covered calls, and this means that you're giving somebody the right to purchase your shares at a specific price and date in the future. So essentially, this is the opposite of a call option. You're just on the seller side. The reason why this is one of my favorite strategies to use in the stock market is because I can use this strategy to get paid as often as I like just for holding the shares that I already own. Now, of course, there's a catch, right? There's always a catch. So in order to sell a covered call, you have to have 100 shares of the stock already in your possession because it's going to be used as collateral. And the risk that you're taking is potentially missing out on future profits if the stock price skyrockets past the price that you set to sell it at in the future. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at a covered call that I'm actually selling right now. So before we get into my actual covered call transaction, I created an animation to help kind of visualize what a covered call transaction would look like for you guys. So hopefully this is very easy to follow and it can show you the different scenarios that we'll be working with within a covered call transaction. So we have our seller and we have our buyer, and we're gonna assume that the seller owns the stock at $7. So the seller is going to sell the right to buy the stock for $12 per share to the buyer with the expiration date of January 1st, 2022, so a year from now. And this is going to be in exchange for $100 upfront that the seller will get to keep forever. So halfway through the year, it's July 2021, and the stock price skyrockets to $16 per share. So now the buyer has a couple options. So the buyer can decide to exercise the contract, they can sell the contract to somebody else and collect the premium, or they can hold the contract until that later date. But in this scenario, the buyer decides to exercise the contract. And what this means is that they're gonna go ahead and decide to purchase the 100 shares from the seller for that $12 strike price that they agreed on at the beginning of the year. So the seller is going to sell 100 shares at $12 per share to the buyer, and the buyer is going to give the seller $1,200 for the 100 shares. So in this scenario, the seller gets a total of $1,300, which is the $100 premium plus the $1,200 for the sale. And the buyer has an instant profit of $300, and this comes from the $1,600 value in the shares. So since the stock price is at $16 and you multiply that by the 100 shares that they just purchased, that gives them a value of $1,600, and they'll subtract the $1,200 that they paid, and then they'll also subtract the $100 premium that they paid at the beginning of the year, which nets them a total instant profit of $300. So now we're going to look at a scenario where it's the new year and it's January 2022 and the stock price is at $10. So essentially the buyer decided to hold the contract all year and was banking on the stock price going higher on January 2022, hopefully skyrocketing way past that $12 mark. However, it did not exceed that $12 strike price. So now the buyer is going to let the contract expire worthless. The reason why the buyer is going to let the contract expire worthless is because it doesn't make sense to exercise the contract and pay $12 per share when the current price is only $10. Although the seller would love this, it wouldn't make sense for the buyer to do this. I mean, think about it. So if Apple is trading at 140 right now, you wouldn't willingly go pay 160 for that stock. So the buyer is going to let the contract expire worthless. So what happens now is the seller gets to keep the original premium of $100 that they got in January of 2021, and the buyer leaves with nothing. And as for the seller will be able to rinse and repeat this process and create another contract with a new buyer with a new strike price and a new expiration date. Hopefully this animation was helpful and easy to follow and gave you a good representation of what a covered call transaction looked like. So we're going to go ahead and look at a covered call that I actually sold, and our example today is going to be Marathon Oil. Keep in mind that you need to own 100 shares to sell one contract. So as you can see down here, I own 500 shares, so I actually went ahead and sold 5 covered calls. So we're going to go ahead and go to trade options, and you're gonna change the filters above to sell call. And for the date, keep in mind that the closer the date is to today, the less valuable your contract is going to be, because it's less likely that the stock price is going to move in this direction, so it's less appealing to somebody who's going to want to buy it. So we're going to go ahead and go to the date that I actually chose, which is January 21st, 2022. So I have a call for a year out, and as you can see, my contract is 86 cents per share, which is equivalent to $86 per contract. And since I sold 5 contracts, that means that I got 86 times 5, which is $440 the day that I sold it. So you get the money up front as a seller. So I got $440 up front, and this person has the right to purchase my stocks, my 500 shares of Marathon Oil on January 21st, 2022 at $12. Now, like I said, I get to dictate the price, and I chose the date, and I did this because I chose $12 because looking at Marathon Oil, if we go to the yearly chart, well, I guess you can go to 5-year. So if you go to the 5-year chart, for most of the trades that I've entered, I've considered the pre-pandemic performance. So when looking at Marathon Oil in December of 2019, before the pandemic occurred, it was trading at $13.48. So, and when the pandemic hit, it dropped to $3. Hence why my average is so low. I have an average of 573. And so when we're looking at the options, I chose a $12 option because I felt like it was less likely that the stock price is going to reach $12, and therefore the person that buys this contract is going to let the contract expire. And what that would mean for me is that I would keep the $440 that I got today, and I would also keep my 500 shares come January 21st, 2022. And if the person happens to actually exercise this contract and the stock price is at or above $12 come January 21st, 2022, that means I would sell my shares for $12 a share. And that's also great for me because my average is only 573. So you would take the 12 and you would subtract it by the 573, and that would give you 627. And when you take the 627 and you multiply that by the 500 shares that I'm selling, that would be equivalent to $3,135 in profit. And keep in mind that I got the $440 upfront, so you'd add that as well, and that would give you a total of $3,575 in profit. So when looking at covered calls, you want to choose a price that's going to bring you profit in the future and also give you enough money that you're satisfied with upfront. Now you may be wondering why I didn't sell my covered call at the $10 strike price, because it would give me $1.26 per share up front today, which is equivalent to $630 today. Well, that's because I believe in Marathon Oil reaching their pre-pandemic prices, or at least close to it, and I didn't want to miss out on that additional $2 per share, because the downside of selling a covered call is missing out on additional profit. So looking at my $12 call, come January 21st, 2022, if it's above $12, say it's at $15, well, I just sold it short. So I sold 500 shares at $12, when if I would have held it and didn't do the covered call, I could have sold for $15 a share. So that's why I didn't choose the $10 option, because I didn't want to miss out on the additional profit that I would have gotten from selling for $12 a share. However, I actually hope that it doesn't reach $12, because this way I'll get to keep my shares and repeat this process and get paid upfront just for owning my shares. I feel like you just can't beat this strategy. So when you look at my equity in MRO, which is just my average cost multiplied by how many shares I own, that means I invested a total of $2,864 in this company. And I have the potential to get paid $440 or more every year just for holding the stock. Deciding whether to invest in this company and sell covered calls or leave my money in my bank account where I'll get at most $5 a year, it's just a no-brainer. Keep in mind that when selling covered calls, you're in control of the strike price and the expiration date. And Robinhood has a nice feature where they show you your chance of profit. And that means that the higher your chance of profit, the more likely you'll be able to keep your shares at the end of the contract. However, this also means the less money that you'll get up front today. Lastly, I only do this strategy with stocks that have low volatility, which means they don't have crazy price swings, which allows me to better predict what the price will be in the future. So that was an example of a covered call. Once again, this is one of my favorite things to do in the stock market because I can set the price, I can set the date, I can control the risk to a certain extent and get paid as often as I'd like. So hopefully you can use this strategy to your advantage as well. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to get notified every time I post. Best of luck trading and stay safe.